What if I told you that surviving your spiritual awakening was just the beginning, and that the hardest part hasn't even started yet? You went through the fire, you felt your ego collapse, you watched your old life burn down, but now you stand in silence and the real question emerges: what do I do with this new self? You see, most people believe awakening is the finish line, the grand finale of spiritual life. But Carl Jung warned us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That's because what comes after awakening is even more demanding. It's not about visions, not about bliss, not about floating above your old identity. It's about building a life that is true to your soul, one raw choice at a time. Think about it. You've survived the descent into your own underworld. The illusions shattered. The masks ripped away. The ego cracked like glass. But now, with no applause, no fireworks, no one clapping for your transformation, you're left with the most dangerous and sacred task of all: integration. And this is where most people falter. Not in the awakening itself, but in the living that comes after. They see the truth and recoil. They touch the sacred and then forget. They crawl back into comfort, pretending they never saw what was behind the veil. But you didn't click on this video by accident. Something inside you is still burning, still asking, still yearning. So stay with me until the end, because in this video you'll discover the hidden path Jung described, the steps no one talks about, what you must actually do after your awakening. How to live whole, not perfect. How to embody your truth in a world that profits off your forgetting. And before we dive deep, let me ask you, have you already felt that tension, the craving for depth, for solitude, for truth, while the rest of the world seems satisfied with noise and illusion? So, you are exactly where you need to be. This message is for you. If this resonates, subscribe right now and share your thoughts in the comments. Not for me, but for you. Because if this speaks to your soul, it means you're ready for the next chapter of your awakening. When the storm of awakening fades, you're left standing in an unfamiliar clearing. There's no map, no guide, just silence. And here is where the temptation arises, to rush back into building a life that looks like the old one. To wear the same mask, to return to the same roles, to fit back into the same systems that once defined you. But listen carefully, this is the most dangerous trap of all. Carl Jung called this moment the threshold. Surviving the collapse of the ego is not the end, it is the beginning of becoming whole. Awakening is not about perfection. It's not about transcending your humanity. It's about meeting every part of yourself, the anger, the shame, the jealousy, the grief, with radical honesty. Because wholeness, not enlightenment, is your real task. Think about it like this: your ego shattered, but the shadows didn't disappear. The abandoned inner child is still there. The silent parts of you that learned to stay quiet are still there. The ghosts of your past pain are still whispering. Awakening doesn't erase them, it invites you to finally meet them. To sit with them, to listen without flinching. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. This is your challenge now, to confront the puppeteer in the shadows of your psyche. Not to kill it, not to exile it, but to understand it, to integrate it, to become an alchemist of the soul, turning the heavy lead of your wounds into the gold of wisdom. Every trigger you feel now is not a failure, it is a flare, a message from your unconscious saying, look at me, heal me, integrate me. The truth is, many people escape here. They distract themselves with more books, more teachers, more spiritual tools. But the real classroom is within. It is silent. It is lonely. It is humbling. And it demands brutal honesty. This is not about being healed, it's about becoming whole. And yet, the world will not understand this. There will be no applause for your authenticity. No reward for your clarity. People still asleep will look at you as if you no longer belong. And that ache you feel when you look at them? It isn't because they're wrong. It's because you've outgrown the world that once felt like home. You begin to notice it in small ways. The conversations that once entertained you now feel shallow. The routines that once defined you now feel like cages. Social expectations buzz around you like static, irritating your nervous system. You crave depth the way your body craves oxygen. Silence becomes your sanctuary. Solitude begins to feel holy. But with this craving comes another challenge: loneliness. Because awakening strips away everything you thought you needed. Approval, identity, roles. And in their place, it leaves nothing but presence. And presence at first feels unbearable. It amplifies instead of numbs. It burns away every illusion you once used as armor. Carl Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming yourself, is the most radical act. It threatens the tribal mind. It disrupts the comfort of the collective. And this is why your awakening may feel isolating. Because you are no longer performing. You are no longer bending yourself to fit a mold. You are choosing authenticity over approval, and not everyone around you can handle that. But here's the secret. This loneliness is not punishment. It is initiation. The path of awakening has always been walked in shadows, not in crowds. The silence you feel now is the soil in which your new life will take root. Eventually, the fire inside you shifts. It's no longer the chaos of collapse. It becomes something quieter, steadier, a deep, resonant yes echoing from your soul. This yes does not need applause. It does not need recognition. It simply lives. And in this quiet devotion to truth, real power is born. Not the power to control others, but the power to remain true to yourself in a world built to seduce you back into forgetting. That's why this stage is so critical. You're not just learning how to see the truth, you're learning how to embody it. To embody your awakening means speaking even when your voice shakes. Leaving what is toxic even if it's familiar. Choosing alignment over attachment no matter the cost. And this, more than anything else, is where you will be tested. If you've ever felt torn between your truth and the comfort of belonging, know this: you are not alone. Many of us walk this path in silence, but we walk it together. And if these words resonate, pause for a moment, subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Not just to support the channel, but to declare to yourself, I choose truth. I choose presence. I choose awakening. At this stage, the temptation is strong to perform your authenticity. To make it palatable, digestible, marketable, something the world can easily accept. But the truth is raw, and it isn't meant to be polished. Let yourself be misunderstood. Let yourself be imperfect. Your soul didn't come here to be liked. It came here to be lived. This is where embodiment becomes your practice. Not collecting truths like trophies, but wearing them, bleeding them, living them in every small choice of your day. Integrity when no one is watching. Honesty when it costs you comfort. Boundaries when your voice shakes. Jung understood this. Individuation is not about transcendence. It is about wholeness. And wholeness comes when you embrace the opposites within you, the light and the shadow, the joy and the grief. You may notice how your shadow adapts. It doesn't disappear, it evolves. It wears new masks, it whispers in subtle ways. Just when you think you've outgrown it, it shows up dressed as love, disguised as opportunity. This is why vigilance is essential. To walk beside your shadow with eyes open. Not to exile it again, but to integrate it. And this integration is not glamorous. It is messy, it is human, it is humbling. But it is also sacred. Because every trigger becomes a doorway. Every conflict becomes an invitation. Every heartbreak becomes a teacher. Healing, as Jung taught, is not a straight line. It is a spiral. Each return to your wounds is not regression. It is a deeper initiation. So let the work be slow. Let it be imperfect. Depth cannot be rushed. Your soul blooms in sincerity, not speed. And yes, this will cost you. Some people will fall away. Some relationships cannot survive your truth. There will be grief. There will be loneliness. But there will also be clarity, an inner compass that grows stronger with every boundary you set, every truth you honor. This is the paradox. Awakening strips you bare, but in that stripping, it reveals your true strength. It shows you that you are not here to be pure, but to be whole. Not to escape your humanity, but to live it fully. And when the world doesn't understand, when people walk away, when the old comforts crumble, remember, this is not the end of your path. It is the proof that you are walking it. There comes a moment when the dust of awakening settles and you find yourself staring at the life you once built, your job, your relationships, your ambitions, and you feel like a stranger inside it all. Not because it's inherently wrong, but because you are no longer the one who created it. The identity that built that world no longer exists. This is the danger and the gift of awakening. You must now reconstruct something real. But hear me clearly, it is not about self-improvement. It is about truth. The temptation will be to rebuild quickly, to fill the empty space with noise, to ease the discomfort of the unknown. But Jung urged us to linger here in what he called the night sea journey, a passage where the psyche drifts without landmarks, suspended between the known and the unknown. This liminal space feels terrifying. It feels like floating in a vast ocean with no shore in sight. And yet, it is here, in this in-between, that your deepest transformation takes root. The silence after collapse holds more wisdom than 1,000 teachings. Don't rush it. Don't escape it. Let yourself be shaped by it. Because this is where your inner compass begins to stir. At first it trembles, but with every act of self-trust it strengthens. With every boundary you honor, with every truth you speak, with every no that protects your yes, your soul begins to whisper the contours of a new life. Not a life designed to please the world, but one that mirrors the raw sincerity of who you've become. And yet, the old wounds will try to reclaim their territory. They don't vanish because you've awakened. They evolve. They echo in new relationships. They disguise themselves in opportunities. They test whether you will live your truth or betray yourself again. This is why awakening demands vigilance. The ego shattered once, but it returns in subtler ways, more cunning, more seductive. It whispers, "Look how healed you are," just before guiding you back into what is toxic, disguised as love or success. Stay awake. Stay vigilant. Because here, in this sacred in-between, you are not just rebuilding a life. You are birthing your soul into form. Every wound you carry will return, not as punishment but as invitation. If you keep attracting the same pain, the same patterns, the same disappointments, it isn't because you are cursed. It's because the wound is still speaking, still seeking your attention. Jung taught us that what we resist persists, and what we fail to integrate becomes our destiny. So instead of fighting these patterns, begin to trace them. Ask, what are you here to show me? Healing is not linear, it is layered. Each return to the wound is not failure but deepening. Every ache, every heartbreak, every trigger is a mirror reflecting back the places where love, compassion, and truth still need to be invited in. This is not easy work. It takes courage to stop running, to face your shadow, to hold it close instead of pushing it away. But this is how wholeness is forged, not by cutting away your darkness but by weaving it into your light. And yes, this path is costly. You will realize that not everyone can walk with you. Some people are tethered to your past. Some relationships were built on the version of you that stayed small, agreeable, safe. When you rise, some will feel abandoned not because of what you've done, but because of what you've become. It hurts. You'll grieve the closeness you once had. You'll ache for the simplicity of your old illusions. But hear me, your transformation is not a betrayal. It is a birthright. You are not meant to make yourself small so others feel comfortable. You are not meant to dim your truth to protect someone else's fear. This grief, the loss of old versions of yourself, the loss of relationships that cannot hold your expansion, is part of the passage. Let it move through you like a storm. Let it shake you, cleanse you, soften you. You are not here to avoid pain. You are here to survive it consciously, to allow it to carve depth into your soul. And from that depth, something ancient stirs. A presence that does not depend on approval. A voice that speaks from the core of your being. This is the alchemy of awakening, not transcendence, but embodiment. Not escape, but return. The deeper you walk into this journey, the clearer it becomes. You are not here to escape the world, but to meet it with new eyes. The world will test you, offering distractions dressed as dreams, opportunities wrapped in illusions, comfort disguised as safety. And you will feel the pull to return to sleep. But something inside you has shifted. Your body revolts against falsehood. Your spirit resists compromise. Your nervous system begins to crave peace over performance, truth over applause. You can no longer tolerate the superficial. Small talk feels empty. Productivity for the sake of approval feels poisonous. Do not mistake this discomfort for failure. It is the sign of your realignment. You are no longer compatible with a life that contradicts your soul. And yes, it may feel isolating at first, but in truth, it is the beginning of belonging. Not belonging to the crowd, but belonging to yourself, to the earth, to those rare souls who see you as you truly are. This is where your life becomes sacred. Where your rest becomes revolutionary in a culture that glorifies burnout. Where silence becomes prayer and presence becomes power. Every breath you take with awareness, every act of self-trust, every boundary you hold, these are not small things. They are declarations, I am awake and I will not forget. So let me say this directly. If these words resonate, don't just watch passively. Take a moment, subscribe, share your reflections in the comments. Not for me but for yourself. Because declaring your truth even here is an act of anchoring it. You're not just consuming wisdom, you're embodying it. There comes a moment when you no longer feel the urge to explain yourself. Not to family, not to friends, not even to the inner critic that once doubted your every move. The questions that haunted you, why am I like this? What's wrong with me? When will I be normal again? Begin to dissolve like mist at sunrise. Not because you found neat answers but because you stopped needing them. You finally understand, life was never asking you to fix yourself. It was asking you to become yourself. This is the shift from seeking to embodying. From performing healing to quietly living it. You stop mistaking insight for superiority. You no longer need to preach. You simply become a presence, a stillness that only speaks when truth is ready to be spoken. Here you step into the archetype of the wounded healer, Not because you are flawless but because you have learned to hold your wounds with grace. The gift you bring the world is not your perfection but your wholeness. And that wholeness carries a weight deeper than words. Life itself becomes quieter yet more vivid. You notice the wind carrying stories, the sacredness of breath, the language of symbols and dreams. You are no longer chasing enlightenment as a distant goal. You are living in the holiness of this moment, your own aliveness. Even suffering begins to shimmer with meaning. Not because it disappears but because you no longer resist its lessons. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And instead whisper, what is this revealing in me? This reframe is everything. It shifts you from victim to witness, from seeker to seer. Life becomes a lucid dream. You recognize illusions without being enslaved by them. And this lucidity is not cold detachment. It is tender compassion. When you have survived your own inner hell, you no longer see others' pain as a threat. You don't rush to fix them. You simply hold space, trusting that their path too is sacred. This is a sign of survival, when you stop trying to rescue others from darkness and instead honor their unfolding. And here, the Jungian concept of the self, the totality of all you are, becomes more than theory. It becomes your lived reality. You feel it when you no longer flinch at your own reflection, when silence feels like presence, when your no carries no guilt, and your yes is free from performance. This is wholeness. Not calm every day. Not perfection. But rootedness. A grounded presence that no chaos can shake. Your energy begins to speak before your words do. Your boundaries become clear without needing defense. Your very presence shifts the atmosphere of the spaces you enter, not because you try but because you are aligned. An alignment, you realize, is not something you chase. It is something you remember. Beneath the noise of fear and conditioning, your essence was always there, waiting. Now you walk without the mask. The world may look at you with confusion, admiration, or discomfort, but none of it penetrates your core. You have returned to yourself. You have remembered your true name, not the one society gave you, but the one your soul has whispered all along. And in this remembrance, creativity flows again, not for applause but because it overflows naturally. Expression becomes effortless. Words, movement, song, silence. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer fear being alone. Solitude transforms into sanctuary, into the soil where love matures. Relationships shift. You no longer seek people to complete you. You seek those who reflect your awakened self. And when you meet them, there is instant recognition, not through words but through presence, through silence, through the resonance of souls who have survived the fire. These connections remind you that awakening, while solitary, is also collective. We wake alone but we walk together, not in dependency but in resonance. Not to be saved but to be seen. And so you arrive at another beginning. This time it is not born of desperation but of presence. Not driven by fear but by alignment. You've stopped striving to become, you've begun allowing yourself to be. You carry the fire now. Not to blind others but to illuminate your path. Not to force truth, but to embody it so fully that your life itself becomes the sermon. You are not here to convince, you are here to radiate. And in this embodiment, you realize the sacredness of the ordinary. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Walking through the forest becomes communion. Loving becomes a sacred act of opening, not a plea for validation. This is spiritual maturity, not floating above life but sinking into it with reverence. Not escaping the chaos, but remaining unshaken by it because you are rooted deeper than noise. The final stage of awakening is not on a mountaintop or monastery. It is in the way you greet a stranger, the way you speak to a child, the way you breathe when no one is watching. Awakening matures when the sacred is carried into the mundane. Here you see the truth, nothing was ever missing. Beneath conditioning, striving, and fear, presence was always waiting. But you had to be broken to remember. You had to be empty to hear. You had to be lost to come home. And still, this path is not a finish line. It is a spiral, peeling back layer after layer. Old wounds return, but each time they reveal new wisdom. Old truths fall away but only to make space for deeper ones. Change is not failure, it is evolution. Life will keep humbling you, stripping you, softening you, not to punish but to prepare you to carry more light. And the more light you carry, the more responsibility you hold, not to perform it but to remain true to it. So if these words resonate, pause. Subscribe. Share your reflections in the comments. Not for me but for you. Because if this is reaching you, it's because you're ready for the next step, not just awakening but living awake. You will notice how little desire you have to convince others of what you've seen. You stop trying to wake people up, not from apathy but from wisdom. Because now you understand, awakening cannot be forced. It is a collapse, a sacred unraveling, a descent one must choose, or at least accept. Some are not ready. Some may never be. And that is not your responsibility. Your task is not to rescue. Your task is to radiate. To live so fully aligned with your soul that your very presence becomes a doorway, one others can walk through when they are ready. There is no rush. There is no competition. Each soul blooms in its own season. And with this understanding comes a calm that is unshakable. The world may appear chaotic, drowning in shadow, consumed by noise, but you see differently now. Every collapse carries within it the seed of rebirth. Every death is also an opening. Every ending hides a beginning. This is why you no longer fear the unknown. You've walked through its fire and found it was not a void, but a womb. The unknown is no longer your enemy. It is your home. From this place you begin to create, not just art or ideas, but a life. A life that nourishes instead of impresses. A life that reflects the depth of your soul, not the demands of society. A life that whispers without needing to scream, "Here I am. And I am real." This is the gift of surviving spiritual awakening. Not that you have escaped pain, but that you now know how to meet it without running. Not that you've found eternal bliss, but that you've learned to dance with despair without losing your center. You are not perfect, you are whole. And in that wholeness, you hold contradictions without breaking. Joy and grief, power and tenderness, boundaries and openness. You are no longer split. You are no longer pretending. You are simply you. In a world drowning in copies, your presence becomes an invocation of the real. And that is more than enough. And yet, the spiral continues. You will revisit wounds you thought were healed. You will outgrow truths you once clung to. Not because they were wrong, but because you have expanded beyond them. Let this happen. Let yourself change again and again. Do not fear the moments when you feel lost. They are not regressions, they are invitations. Life humbles you, strips you, softens you, not to punish but to prepare you. Each time you are broken open, you are being made more spacious, more capable of holding light. And the more light you hold, the more the world will tempt you to perform it. But you must resist. You do not owe your transformation to anyone. You do not have to explain your healing. You only have to live it, quietly, unapologetically, authentically. This is how you become what the world is starving for. Not more noise, not more performance, but truth, depth, presence. There will be a moment when you realize you have no need to argue with life anymore. You no longer panic when things fall apart. You no longer demand certainty. Because now you see that collapse and chaos are part of the dance. You stop fearing change. You stop fearing endings. You begin to trust the unknown as a teacher. And this trust gives you a freedom you never imagined. The freedom to live without needing to control, without needing to cling. This is maturity, not the absence of struggle, but the ability to stand rooted in the middle of it. You breathe through storms. You soften into grief. You choose presence over escape. And slowly, without fanfare, you discover a truth. This is enough. This is everything. Not perfection, not enlightenment as an achievement, but presence as a way of being. With this presence, life itself becomes your teacher. Every silence becomes a lesson. Every mistake becomes a mirror. Every moment becomes sacred. You notice how your relationships transform. You no longer chase people who cannot meet you. You no longer tolerate dynamics that demand your self-betrayal. Instead, you gravitate toward those who can sit in silence with you, those who reflect your wholeness rather than your wounds. And when you meet them, no explanation is needed. The body remembers. The soul knows. Awakening is not solitary after all. It is a collective initiation. We wake alone, but we walk together. This is the quiet revolution. Not preaching, not converting, but embodying. You become a living reminder of what is possible when a human being chooses truth over performance. And so we arrive here, at the edge of words, at the threshold of silence. What does it mean to survive spiritual awakening? It means to live awake. To choose presence again and again. To carry your fire into the ordinary moments of life, until your very being becomes a sermon without words. You will still lose. You will still grieve. You will still be broken open by the unbearable beauty of this human life. But you will no longer abandon yourself. You will no longer run. You will feel even when it hurts. And in that feeling you will know, this breaking is holy. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning. Awakening is not a single event. It is a daily devotion. To wake up, to stay awake, to live awake, to love awake. And if these words touch something inside you, subscribe and share your voice in the comments. Not to support me, but to affirm to yourself, I choose to live awake. Because the world needs what only your soul can give, Your presence, your truth, your wholeness. Welcome home.